So this is Sunday, October the 15th, 2017. I'm to be doing this with my partner in the One Mind Foundation, David Fishman. David's chair is empty, which means he said he'd be a half hour early, so I think he's got to be caught in traffic, is why he's not here, and that he will come in at some point and take over. Most of the slides were actually from David, but I was thinking, it may not seem like the most fun thing in the world to do to go to a talk on guilt. I mean, for a Sunday afternoon, but this is kind of like church for us in a way, but I mean, it is Sunday. It's not a church, we don't have music and stuff like that, but it's a spiritual purpose and a spiritual intent. And one of the most difficult things there is, the Course says, is for us to look at guilt. And yet it is absolutely crucial to understanding this mess that we got ourselves into. By that I mean the mess of even being in an insane world. The Course is very clear that this is an insane world. Lesson 132 says, this is the central thought this Course attempts to teach. It's like, and there's almost this thought, why in the world would we choose to come here? Because the implication is very clear that we chose this. I mean, there are no accidents, So what this place is then, it's not a prison. Again, I like to emphasize that, although there's a point in the Course where it speaks of it as though it's a prison. But it's a school. So obviously we're here to learn. And actually one of the primary things is we're trying to learn and trying to figure out is how not to do this again. And yet the Course says everyone, without exception. Several of you have asked, I have a new granddaughter as of a month ago and a grandson as of 17 months ago. Several of you asked how they're doing. And my 17-month-old grandson broke his leg yesterday. Well, it was an accident. The family had not had an outing for a long time. So they finally decided to go to a children's park somewhere nearby. And his father decided to put him between his legs and to go down a slide together, and somewhere on the way down the slide, I guess his leg got twisted or something. And anyhow, pain, right? I mean, that's, there's no way you're going to get through here without a lot of pain. And physical and psychological. And actually, if you talk about guilt, I think guilt is at the bottom of the barrel in terms of stinky old, if you've ever been into a lot of guilt over something, something that's gone wrong, something you feel responsible for, it's really icky. It's like, ugh, no. It's like, why didn't I pay more attention? Why wasn't I more responsible? One of the ways that I like to think about this is that whenever that kind of thing happens, you may have hurt someone, that's always painful, but also there's something greater than hurting someone, which is hurting the whole, right? It doesn't have to be a specific individual. There just may be something that, if we cheat, for example, in any way, for any reason, it's always about benefiting the self at the expense of hurting the whole. And then you feel guilty. You can't help but feel guilty for that, right? Because you know that you did something amiss. So let's start off with the teacher of teachers. I got Leslie, is it, here, who's from moved here from San Diego, and that's only about 45 minutes from where Ken's place was, so she was a frequent at Ken's. You're forgiven.
What time does it start?
1:30.
Does it really?
Yeah, it really does.
Oh.
Okay.
I told everyone too.
You told everyone too.
Yeah.
Oh. Well, I hope you experienced a great deal of guilt over this.
No, actually, none whatsoever.
See, that would be David's reaction, that he would not have any guilt about it.
Well, today's topic is the guiltless Son of God.
It is, right. So here's the guiltless Son of God standing right in front of you. And we don't have a problem.
I wrote Paula, and
Good.
we were supposed to leave at 12.
Uh-huh.
And my wife said, "Why are you leaving at 12 for a 2 o'clock meeting?" I said,
Oh.
"Oh, you're right."
Oh, well. So this is David Fishman. In case everybody hadn't guessed, David and I have been hanging out together since the mid-'70s. Go back to the days when we started off with S training, the seminar training program, and then I encouraged him to get involved with A Course in Miracles, and he likes to tell the story that on Christmas Eve, 1980, at a New Year's Eve party at my home, the decision was made that David would start A Course in Miracles study group here in New York City, which he did. And we've been hanging out together. Now we're both part of this same organization called the One Mind Foundation. David, I thought I'd do another about 10 minutes or so here to start, and then I'll turn it over to you. Actually, we have about 35 slides. We'll see if we get through them all. The first 7 I picked out. The rest of them are all Ken. It's because I saw his picture. David, is my mic on?
Yes, it is.
It is?
Uh-huh.
Okay. All right. He can hear. So if he can hear, we're on. So let's talk a little about what guilt is, and then we'll turn it over to David. And this is just doing some definition stuff here. So guilt is the psychological experience of the belief in sin. Underline the word belief in sin. And can be defined as the total of all of our negative thoughts, feelings, and beliefs about ourselves. And there are plenty of them. So let's go just a little bit further. So the acceptance of guilt into the mind of God's Son was the beginning of the separation. So let's talk about that line for a second. So this is the beginning of the separation. So as you all know, many of you are good course students, there was some point at which we chose to break away from God. That we said, thank you very much, I'd rather do it myself. And seeing how we have free will, there's nothing, because that's a characteristic of divinity, there's nothing to stop us from doing that. God has free will. We have free will because we're a part of God and God's kingdom. But that also means that we could choose incorrectly. And the moment we chose to break away, mythologically speaking, this is the Adam and Eve story, interpreted from the standpoint of the Course. God does not kick Adam and Eve out of the Garden of Eden. We choose to do it. And as we were just saying a moment ago, we may be wondering why in the world did we choose to do this, because of all the problems that arise in the world, both in terms of pain, for example, as we were saying earlier, physical pain, psychological pain, and guilt is the worst example of psychological pain. But nevertheless, that's the case. That's what has happened. The separation has occurred. Here we are, and what we're really doing is trying to figure out how to get back home again. The whole course is really kind of how do we get back to remembering or recognizing divinity, rather than being caught up in all of the literal insanity of the world. I notice that one thing that I do some counseling over the phone, and the one thing that I notice that I will often say to anyone is when they're starting to go crazy about something, don't let this take the peace of God away from your mind. I mean, it's like, this is not, politics, for example, without going into politics, is not something that should really drive us crazy. And yet it drives some people crazy. But there could be a lot of other things, just what one other human being has done. But then we got, of course, to say you really need to look at that, because one of the things you want to look at is that in me somewhere? How come it is that there's a point in the Course where it says to point out error, right? To point out the error is to bring emphasis to the error. You know, there must be something in you that wants to see it there and wants to advertise it and wants to share it with the world. A large part of that is simply saying, look, it's not in me. The Course says that there are two basic things we do with guilt. We either project it out, so somebody else is responsible, and we can just do horrible things when we do that. Did some of you watch the Vietnam series? It was on PBS about a month or so ago. It was just like, what, 3 million Vietnamese were killed? It's like, what insanity, 58,000 American soldiers. It's like, why? That's insane. It's an insane world. Or, so we either project it out, we say that somebody else is out there is endangering my welfare or whatever. Or we put it in. And when it goes in, it leads to sickness. And that can be manifest in both mental illness and in physical illness. So we bury it into our bodies, and then the next thing you know, there's something wrong with the body. Right? So let's finish this. The acceptance of guilt into the mind of God's Son was the beginning of separation, as the acceptance of the atonement is the end. So let's remember what the word atonement means. The atonement means the undoing. Actually, I titled today's talk, The Undoing of Guilt. David has going to be talking about the guilt of the Son of God in a minute. But it's the undoing of guilt. And it's not easy to undo guilt. But one of the reasons it's not easy, first of all, because it's so deeply buried that we don't want to look at it. I remember once, I think I've shared this with you once before, I was talking to my mother on the phone, and Mother died when she was 85 years, Christmas Day, during her 85th year. It was actually a good day to go. As it turned out, we were all there and loving her as she passed. But when she was about 80, one day I was talking to her on the phone, and she said, I feel so guilty. And I remember thinking, about what? As far as I was concerned, she was a bit of a saint, at least as far as the amount of love that she lavished on both my sister and myself and our family. And she said, I don't know. And I thought that was an honest answer. And I think what it is for all, it was this kind of existential guilt. This kind of the very, the guilt of being a human being, of being in the world, of having chosen this trip, all right? That's why I say we're going on a guilt trip today. Just to look at the guilt, because that's there, the separation, whatever that separation, however that separation manifests itself, separating ourselves from someone else, for example, is just one way that we would choose to do that. All right, so the world you see is a delusional system of those made mad by guilt. And now think about politics for a second. Okay. Okay, you did that. And without talking about anyone or anything at all, it wouldn't just apply to the present moment. There's a lot of guilt. I mean, there's a lot of guilt that's obviously buried around, especially powerful people. They get a hold of. I watched a little thing before falling asleep last night about Napoleon and all the power-hungry seeking and all the millions of people he killed, right? Because he wanted to be Napoleon, so he got to be Napoleon. Right? 2 or 3 more, and then I'm turning it over to David. So, guilt is a sure sign that your thinking is unnatural. One of the 50 miracles principles that we looked at recently is miracles are natural. When they don't occur, something has gone wrong. Love is natural. So as love is natural, miracles are natural, there are things which are unnatural, which would have no place in heaven. Right? So there's no place in heaven for guilt. That wouldn't be antithetical to what heaven is, right? And it's not a part of you. And it need not be part of you, except insofar as we do these things that are segregating and separating and selfish, and when we break off from the whole. So sin is the grand illusion underlying the ego's grandiosity. So behind the guilt, first, let me go on one more here with this. So sin is always something about the past, right? So it's something that happened in the past. Guilt is my experience of sin in the present. So what I'm doing is I'm remembering something that went wrong. I remember it, and I'm doing this to myself in the sense of, you idiot, you stupid, you know, why in the world, why weren't you more thoughtful? Why were you so aggressive? You know, don't you realize what you're doing? So then we kind of wallow in the guilt. And that's a very unpleasant place. And you're definitely not happy. Happiness would be the opposite of guilt in this sense. And of course, it's very clear, Lesson 101, God's will for me or for you is perfect happiness. Perfect happiness. But there can't be any guilt in perfect happiness. And a couple more. So so we got guilt. Fear then is my anticipation of punishment because of the guilt. All right, so now I'm afraid that because I did something, quote, against God, I'm going to be punished. And as we know, there are some religious organizations, particularly from the past, some of which are kind of dying out very nicely, that place a tremendous amount of emphasis on guilt, right? That so much so that, what was your saying that you shared with me in the car about the Irish and the...
The Irish are shame-based, and everybody else is guilt-based.
Okay. It's the same idea, right? But it's in there, right? Big time. And we're taught that. That's the whole thing about being taught that. So the Course is teaching us something totally different. It's teaching us the freedom from guilt rather than being trapped in the thing. And teaching it as well. So fear is really nothing and love is everything. Direct quote from the Course. That's absolutely everything. All there is love, right? And that's why it says in the very, very first introduction to the Course, right? That there are only 2 possibilities, love and fear. That what is all-encompassing can't have an opposite, so there really isn't anything to be afraid. God is, interesting, our big fear is really of God. And the reason we're afraid of God is that God is like this. We're afraid that if God wins, which God is inevitably already won, actually, then our poor little egos are going to get crushed. And that's all true, right? Because then you never were an ego in the first place, so all that's happening is you're getting to wake up from a dream. But prior to awakening, often there comes a nightmare. You know, and the nightmare is that God's going to get me, that I'm being annihilated. What you don't realize is that's what you want. You want that old thing to be annihilated, because once that's annihilated, one of the things I like to say is, does the butterfly remember the caterpillar? There's that old thing called a caterpillar, and there's this beautiful thing that we call a butterfly. The ego does not realize the angelic nature that awaits it once it lets go of its hold onto its identity, which it thinks of as a reality. And of course, as we all know, it has no reality, but we think of it as having reality. A couple more, David, and it's all yours. Okay, so it is essential that error not be confused with sin, and this is part of what we're learning now. And it's this distinction that makes salvation possible. That's a very important distinction, and essential that error not be confused with sin. So the course is teaching us these are mistakes. We all make mistakes. We all make a lot of mistakes. The advantage of understanding it's a mistake is that a mistake can be corrected. We can ask for forgiveness. We can change our minds. We can see things differently. We can begin to behave differently, etc. The problem with sin is that it like hangs in there, and we continue to fear punishment because of something that happened in the past. For error can be corrected, the wrong made right, but sin, were it possible, would be irreversible. So actually there is no sin. God doesn't see sin. Would be another way to see this. God sees you as who you are in truth, which is a whole child of God. And God has nothing but love for you. And in that sense, God maybe see that you're having a bad dream, but it's just a bad dream. It's not your reality. In reality, you're a perfect child of God. Having a dream temporarily, that's an important point to this, temporarily, that's something in time, and seeing how there's no time. In eternity, this doesn't count, it doesn't even exist. Just one or more, okay, there we go. We are now come to David. This is your first slide that you
That's great.
gave me.
What does it say? Fear comes from the belief in loss, and guilt comes from the belief in loss of peace.
All right,
Yes.
you stand here and I'll sit there for a while.
Okay, very good.
I will feel free to interrupt you at any point. And I'll go to the next slide whenever you're ready.
Okay. Do you want this?
Actually, you can, if you want to, you just
Okay. All right. Very good.
do this and you go to the next slide.
How do you go to the next line then?
Just like
Oh, this like this. Okay.
and then to go back.
Wow.
Back.
This is cool.
Just remember, you got to go left to right.
All right. Hi, everybody. I'm happy to be here, and I'm just going to start off by saying that we are all free, born free, and I enjoy playing with words, very, very much like John. John's always playing with words. The word God has this meaning that we've given to it from God knows when.
Literally.
But another word for God is freedom. And if you look at God as freedom, and I and the Father are one, we are free. The belief in guilt of any kind is the belief that you're in prison, that you're limited, that you're small, that somehow you're not worthy, that you're trying very hard to be free of this stuff So as John points out, we project this stuff out onto others, and that, of course, keeps us the same, which is guilty, because the world you see is nothing more than an outside picture of this inner condition. It's this inner condition that we want to be free of. So when John asked me to come here, he said, do you have a topic? And in a way, I hate giving topics ahead of time, because then I have to stay on topic. But I had just opened up to, I think it's chapter 13, section 2, called The Guiltless Son of God. And I read it, and I realized I had never really read, I mean, of course I read it years ago, but never really looked at it again. And I said, wow, this is incredible, the guiltless Son of God. And we know the Course is all about forgiveness. And forgiveness is nothing more than letting go of the beliefs. And my idea of the word belief, which I think I mentioned the last time I was here back in May. Every belief we have has a lie in the center of it. Belief is spelled with a lie right in the center of it. And we have all kinds of beliefs, you know, the belief about God, and the belief about who we are, the belief about what's good, what's bad, what's right, what's wrong, who's good, who's guilty, who's innocent. And we have all those are all concepts. And in the Course it actually says, in the last chapter, self versus self-concept, salvation can be said to be an escape from all concepts, because as long as we're talking in words, God, what's God? What's free? You know, what's time? What's space? What's distance between me and my brother? What does all that mean? The distance between me and my brother.
I like that we have Alan, I got a print, Zhao Wang, a young Chinese girl, in her description of her mystical experience, she says, concepts are the ego's clothes. And I thought, what a great line that, concepts are the ego's clothes. Right?
The ego's what?
Clothes.
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 Yeah.
You dress up in.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's our disguise. That's our identity.
Right.
The moment you stop identifying with your thoughts, with your beliefs, you are free. Literally. That's what the holy instant is. Entering the holy instant is not taking one thought with you. And Jesus is actually very easy and gentle on it. He says it doesn't mean you can't have thoughts. Just no thoughts that you would hold on to, nothing that you would believe to be true. It's okay to have thoughts. We all have thoughts. You can't stop the thoughts. But it's our investment in these thoughts, meaning that I think that's true. Yeah, that person is guilty, you know. Yeah, isn't it obvious? I have fun with the word sin, too. Actually, in the Course, it's in the teacher's manual, What is Sin? It starts off with a 3-word sentence, and I always love when Jesus gives us a 3-word sentence or a 4 or 5-word sentence, because he says, I want you to focus on this. Sin is insanity. It's a 3-word sentence. Of course there's no sin, except if I'm in my insane mind, if I'm in my dream, my mind that fantasizes, imagines things, you know, and if I am invested in it, you know, there's another 3-word sentence. It's in Totality of the Kingdom in paragraph 4. He says, illusions, which is what we like to call the world is an illusion, but what do you mean by an illusion anyway? What do you mean by an illusion? Illusions are investments, a 3-word sentence. What am I invested in? What am I worshiping? What am I addicted to? And this world is an addiction. Guilt is an addiction. There's no two ways about it. You know, we talk about the opioid addiction. And the opioid addiction, I heard just as news, there is a 9/11 every 3 days in the opioid addiction. In other words, the amount of people that died in 9/11, that's how many died from the opioid epidemic at this point, every 3 or 4 days, I think it is. So, what do you mean by addiction? It means that what we really believe to be true, believe with a lie in it. We believe to be true. On the way here, I was given this wonderful insight. I have a birthday lesson 133. I was born on the 12th of May, John, on the 16th of May, and on a leap year, lesson 133 is my birthday lesson. And I've said for many years now, what's the possibility that you're born on the lesson, the day of the lesson that you were born to teach? And lesson 133, even Jesus says it's a very practical lesson, and I encourage everyone to take a look at it. It says, I will not value what is valueless, for what's valuable belongs to me. What's valuable belongs to me. But yet I'm valuing everything else, what is valueless. And that's an addiction, by the way. I mean, I'm talking about big time addiction, big. I'm not talking about small. I'm talking about, this is it. This is why we believe in guilt. Because, basically, when God created us, he says, you are beloved of me and I am beloved of you, and this is true forever and ever. And we said, I will. It's that will, that our one will, that we are created and we're free. But in the belief that we can become special, become more, become greater, we made a world that is unreal. That which is real cannot be threatened. Yes, what I am cannot be threatened. That which is unreal doesn't even exist. This is the peace of God. It tells you this is the whole course in a few lines. The whole course. Lesson 133, he gives you 3 criteria for looking at what has value or no value whatsoever. The first 2 is all you need to break the addiction. That's all you need, the first 2. He says, if you value something that begins in time and ends in time, time is the vast illusion. Remember, it says time is the vast illusion. It says it in the Course. You're believing in something that is an idol. Your idle thoughts are taking you away from your true thoughts. So you believe in something that begins in time and ends in time, like I've walked through the door of on time or not on time, and thoughts were, my God, how could he do that? But actually, we're totally free. That's the truth. If you run your life based on a watch or notice I don't really wear watches. I really don't. I used to.
We're going to get you one.
No, actually, I wore watches for 70 of my 77 years. So I know what it is to wear a watch. There's a guy named Larry Dossey. I don't know if anyone knows Larry Dossey. He wrote a book, I think it's called Time, Space, and Miracles, or Time, Medicine, and Miracles. Time, Medicine, and Miracles. And in that book, which was from the 1980s, he said, actually, wearing a watch is hazardous to your health, literally. Because you're taking the mind of the Son of God, which is unlimited and free, and you're constricting it to time. And Jesus tells you, I mean, he doesn't hold any punches. He says, hey, time is the vast illusion. So our insistence that the things of time, things that are of temporary value, is something that I want, I got to have, in order to be finally free, is, quote, upside down. I mean, the Course tells you the world is upside down, which it is. It's insane. So whenever you're valuing something in the world, you're forgetting the vow that you originally made with the love of God, with freedom. You're valuing basically a prison sentence. You're valuing something that begins in time and ends in time, spending a lifetime on death row, because death is always the end, and you're spending it in solitary confinement, basically, alone in a body. So whenever you're valuing anything in this world of beginnings and endings, beginnings, middle, and ending, notice that all your stories have a beginning, a middle, and an ending. It has really no value at all, because you've given up what has true value. What's really valuable belongs to me, and I'm trying to get something out there. In the 3 lessons of the Holy Spirit, which you find in chapter 6, section 5, A, B, and C, to have, give all to all. To have, give all to all. So it's in the giving, it's in the sharing that we remember our true abundance, which is our true value, our true worth. Because all is given to us, all is given to us. In the second of the 3 lessons, to have peace, teach peace to learn it. Because what is it you're going to give? Is he going to give things of this world? Like, give a book? No, to give things of this world, you're going to run out of things. And the ego is going to tell you, hey, if you give, you're not going to have. And the ego is right. So obviously I'm not here to give the things of this world. I'm here to share and give the love, the peace, the light, the kindness, what we truly are, our gentleness, our openness, what we truly are as God created all equally and the same. But if I am focused on the things of this world, I'll never have what it is that I want, because I think it's going to give me something that I don't have now. And we talked earlier about fear comes from the belief in loss. Actually, not only the belief in loss, but the belief in lack. Because in this world, we do go through the world of things which we lack, which we want to get. I won't be happy, perfect happiness, until I get something. In that second of the 3 lessons of the Holy Spirit, he says, if you're here to heal yourself, the very first step in healing, or the very first step in undoing the belief in guilt, is to stop the getting habit. Stop the getting habit. Because if you think the world is for getting something, that's your investment in guilt. That's your investment that you don't have. That somehow God passed you by, that somehow others have something that you don't have, that you're an exception. But love makes no exceptions. Love makes no exceptions. There are no exceptions in God. There's no exceptions in freedom. Freedom is, love is, peace is. It's an isness. But the insane mind, the mind that believes in sin, which is another word for insanity, a mind that has all kinds of rules, laws of chaos, ordering our own mind. I got to have this in order to get this, and when I have this, then I'll be okay. Those are the laws of, well, we call it the laws of ego, but laws of chaos, or I call it the laws of complexity. Freedom, or God, is simplicity, simplicity. And God gives all to all the same, equally, that there is no difference. So one of the 2 criteria in lesson 133 that I talk about, and these he only takes a few sentences on each, by the way. He only takes 2 sentences for each of these. They're so simple. They're so simple, and yet that's all you really need. If I value something that begins in time and ends in time, something that has temporary value, it has no value to the eternal that I am.
I'm thinking about how recently the people losing all their homes in the fires and in the hurricanes, and all this stuff. And one of the things you hear, see, some of the folks are saying, it's just stuff. I mean, we're here, we're fine.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I remember Aldous Huxley, when his house burned down to the ground in 1961 in the Bel Air fires. And somebody said to him, how does it feel? He's standing watching his house burn down. He says, you know, it's a marvelously clean feeling.
That's beautiful. Right. Right. Yeah. I'm sure most of you remember that line from the song, Janis Joplin's song, although I was corrected, Chris Christopherson actually came up with it, and me and Bobby McGee. Freedom is just another word for nothing left to lose. And I got to tell you, recently that's come up a lot for me. And I think I even may have put that somewhere in but that's okay. It's definitely, it's really where I am these days. As long as you think you need something or have to get something, whatever you're going to get, you're going to lose anyway. Exactly as John just mentioned. I mean,
including this.
Yeah. This world or this dream is not left by death, which is the end of the story, according to the ego. It's left by truth. I mean, this is right out of, I think it's chapter 13, section 2, which is the guiltless Son of God. The world is not left by death. In fact, in places like India, they don't ever use the word death. He dropped his body. You're clean. You're clean. I mean, he dropped his house, his clothing, his disguise, his costume, his mask. But that's not who he is. But as long as you identify with the body, as long as you identify with the thoughts of the thought system that sees differences, thought system that lives in time on the horizontal axis of past and future, never really being here in the eternal now, you are basically stuck in a prison. And almost one of my favorite words, which thanks to John, we came home on the plane together. I said, what's that word? He said, treadmill. Yeah, you're walking on a treadmill going nowhere. Most of you probably know that book by Michael Singer, The Untethered Soul. The Untethered Soul. A beautiful book. If you haven't gotten it, along with John's books, get The Untethered Soul. And the untethered soul is one that's not tethered. Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Wait, you got to have the mic.
Hi. So I guess this is really directed to John. That story you told about Aldous Huxley and his house burning down, feeling cleansed by it. I don't like that.
Okay.
I really believe, and I think Eckhart Tolle said it best, honor everything attached to nothing. There's a implicit or even explicit urging to not even have these feelings. Your house burns down, you're fine, like not getting angry in the first place, or not feeling sad. I mean, these are all remarkable things characteristic to a human being.
Sure.
To really honor it. But it's the attachment. And I kind of feel in a lot of the spiritual teachings this dismissal of feelings that come up. And there's a story about this great Buddhist monk who was sobbing uncontrollably when his mother died. And his students were, saying, I can't believe this. Isn't it all an illusion? And he said, yes, but this is the most painful illusion of all. So, in any case, what you said struck me.
Okay. Well, let's keep it on. First of all, Aldous Huxley, as you all know, was a pretty deep spiritual guy who had spent much. He died 2 years later, the same day John F. Kennedy died. So it didn't make the headlines. But he was more in a position, I think he had learned a lot about letting go. And he'd learned about what real freedom was. certainly not everybody who's lost their homes and stuff is saying what they said. We're just saying that's a possibility, that if you're working on the spiritual advancement, you could see it, including the big one, which is letting go of these bodies, and recognize that that's nothing too, because that's just something mortal that ends in time. Eric, you got the mic for over here? You got a mic on that side?
Yeah, yes.
Pass it over to Eric.
Thanks. Just along those lines, I was listening to a channeling of Mary Magdalene the other day, and she said something that I thought was so sweet. She said that
I
don't think you're turned on.
Your mic's not on.
Press and hold it. Hello?
There you go.
Okay. She said, Mary Magdalene said that saints aren't, it's not about transcending this life. It's about a saint can read the furrows in every man's face, every furrow in every face, which I thought was just so beautiful.
Yeah. Go ahead, David.
Can I add one comment to your perception of what John said? Just another way of looking at that. You said, Eckhart Tolle said, honor all, hold on to nothing. In Course perspective, that could easily be translated into honor all, which is of the truth, spirit, grace, peace, honor all, hold on to nothing, which is form. So you would be hold on to nothing, the house, and honor what's behind it. So his could be a higher elevation of perception, but I could see where that comes in. But your point on it as well. But I think when Eckhart said that, he was saying to honor the truth and don't hold on to the form of the house. It's not saying honor in the house. Yeah, that's just,
Right.
just a... Hi, Pam, by the way. She's welcome.
Go ahead, David.
All right. Thank you. Thank you all for...
Tethered soul.
I missed it, what?
You were talking about the tethered soul. The book?
Oh, you mean the Michael Singer book?
Yeah.
What are you talking about?
Yeah. The untethered soul is one that is totally free. What we have done is we have tied ourselves down to time and space. And those are the two criteria that basically it says if you value anything that begins in time and ends in time, that you will be a prisoner of time. And that's what being a prisoner is about. You are not free because you're invested in something that's not real. You've given your thoughts, your mind, the mind of God, which is a free mind, an open mind. You've limited it. You've put yourself into a constricture. You're constraining yourself. Time is a constraint. If you look at the hands of a clock, you notice that the minute hand goes around and passes the hour hand once an hour, but notice that they're all tied to the center of the circle. They don't go anywhere. They just go around and around. That's that treadmill. You know, even walking on a treadmill this way, just going around and around. It's a merry-go-round, literally. Nothing's really happening. You're just passing time. The other criteria, which I call space, he says, if you think that your brother has something that you don't have that you really want, I'm going to get it, right? One way or another, I'm going to earn it, I'm going to get it, I'm going to steal it, whatever I have to do to have it so I can finally be free. Or you think that you have something that your brother doesn't have that you're going to hold on to and value. This is valuable, He doesn't have it, and this is. I got a big house. I have a mansion that gives me a lot of space. Whatever you're valuing that is in space or in time has no value whatsoever. You're valuing something that you think another person has that you don't have, but what God gives, he gives to all equally the same. How is it possible that your brother has something that you don't have? One of my favorite sections is in the Song of Prayer, which only has 3 sections. The first is on prayer, the second is on forgiveness, and the third is called Healing to Separate. It's where Jesus kind of is chuckling and laughing like he does throughout the course. He says, do you really think that you can sit at the feet of some guru who knows so much more than you, has so much You are free to do that anytime you want. Yeah. Actually, kind of reminds me of what John Mark said at the weekend that John and I just spent. I free you. He says, instead of saying I love you, I free you, because that's the truth. I mean, that's what God is saying. You are free. You know, to be my son doesn't mean you have to be a certain way. You know, you're free. You have free will, literally. But we only have one will. It's the same will as the will of God. If you use your will against someone, which is the ego's way of seeing differences or separation, then what we're really doing is we think that our will is separate from the will of God, and that's the only mistake that we made. There's only one will. Thy will be done. That same guy, Larry Daci, who wrote that book, he goes around to medical schools teaching prayer to new doctors. He was on the Oprah show, and he was telling how he goes teaching new doctors coming up in the ranks about the power of prayer. So Oprah says to him, but Dr. Daci, what is your prayer when you're in surgery and there's something critical happening? He said, I only have one prayer. Thy will be done. You see, it is being done. When the house burned down, like, thy will be done. You know, everything happens perfectly. All things are lessons God would have me learn. Lesson 193, and that's part of the last 20 lessons in part 1 of the workbook, and he tells you any one of the lessons, any one of the 20 lessons in from 181 to 200, any one of the lessons is the entire course. I mean, for instance, you can use lesson 194, I place the future in the hands of God. If you totally place the future in the hands of God, what difference does it matter what happens to your house, to your body? Yeah, go ahead, sure.
I'm having a hard time with this is a lesson that God would have me learn, or everything that happens is in my own best interest. How do I reconcile that with I'm having a dream God doesn't know I'm having? It seems to contradict.
I'm having a dream that God, what?
I'm stuck in this dream that God is not aware of.
I see. Okay. Yeah, it does say in the Course, God is not really aware of your dream. Well, the Course is all about you waking up from the dream. When I'm healed, I'm not healed alone. That's lesson 138, a very powerful lesson, because if I'm dreaming, I see a lot of differences. Oh, that guy is awake, but I'm not. Not true. We are all free and awake now. The Son of God is awake, but when I identify with the thoughts in my mind, I'm dreaming. If I identify, remember, the instant that you stop identifying with your thoughts, you are free. The instant. That's what the holy instant is. You can enter the holy instant, as he says in chapter 18, section 7, which is, I need do nothing. He says the thought that you have just before you enter the holy instant is, I need do nothing. If you think you have to do something in order to have something, that's the ego again. The ego is always thinking it doesn't have what it needs. I have to get, I have to learn. I haven't finished the course yet, but when I finish the course, maybe I'll be in a different place. obviously, for those people who've gone through the course many times, you know that that's not true. Yeah, go ahead.
Would you please return to your...
All right, would you gotta have the mic. Otherwise, it doesn't get recorded.
Thank you. Could you please return to your comment about sitting at the feet of a guru before
Okay,
the
very
sound
good.
happened?
Thank you. Okay. Thank you for bringing me back. Yeah. This is on page 17 of the Song of Prayer, which is one of the pamphlets of the Course in Miracles. He said, do you really think that you could sit at the feet of a guru and learn what he learns so that one day you'll have what this person has? You'll be equal? Really? He says, you really think that? He says, that's impossible. He uses the word impossible. That's, in fact, I think it's a two-word sentence. That's impossible. You cannot go from being unequal to equal. That's impossible. You've always been equal. You are the eternal Son of God, pretending to be less than equal. Thinking that someone else knows something that you don't know, but recognize what that, quote, knowledge is. As Eckhart Tolle said, you don't need more information. You don't need more form. What do we think that knowledge is that person is going to impart to you? Is going to give you something that you don't have, really? That's from the limited thought system of the ego, that always sees something outside as being better. He knows more. One day in time, I'll be there. I'm not there yet. That's the insanity of the ego. See, for me personally, I'll give you how I look at things in my own life. Actually, on Friday the 13th, which was just this past Friday, at first it was a great day. I think someone said, oh, 13 is my good number. I said, great, this is going to be a great day. And all of a sudden, I had all kinds of difficulties with my computer. And the one thing that's going to get me, less than happy, less than peaceful, going into upset, is when something happens to my computer and, my God, and I have two computers, and it happened on both computers, there was something wrong. It was, on the first one, the mouse wasn't working. I don't even want to tell you, but that was about, but all things were absolutely perfect, but I went through this, quote, minor upset. Now, how I look at my upsets is, wait a minute, am I going to allow this to take away my peace? Am I going to allow this to take away my peace? And that's exactly what guilt does. Guilt is the belief that something is wrong, and how dare you be peaceful? How dare you be peaceful? You got to fix this. You have to fix the problem. That reminds me of the Ken Wapnick parable, which everyone loves. Well, what's the ego but a maladjusted solution to a non-existent problem? You don't have any problems. I mean, the man who lost his house, he said, I feel clean. He didn't have any problems. He felt clean. But clean or cleanse or the forgiven mind, the mind that is totally clean, that means that you've removed all the debris or the schmutz. In fact, Kenny says if you're from Brooklyn, you use the word schmutz or mishigas. That's the word to use, which is another word for insanity. So forgiveness is not forgiving anybody. Forgiveness is this huge vacuum cleaner that it takes all the stuff that you give to it and it just lets it go. That's the secret of salvation, given to Brent Haskell, who wrote the book, most of you probably know, Journey Beyond Words, the companion book to the workbook for the Course in Miracles. And in it, Yeshua was channeled to Brent, you want to know the secret of salvation? Relax your mind, release your thoughts, and let go. Your thoughts are driving you crazy. That's the insanity. That's the loss of peace. I'm valuing my computer, it's broken. What am I going to do? So the ease in which you can return or restore your mind to sanity is really the progress that you've accomplished in the course. If you go through the whole day or the whole week or the whole month or the whole year thinking about this thing that took away your peace, well, that's obviously where you are right now. When you recognize that I am the peace, I don't need anything in this world. There's nothing in this world I want. Lesson 128, there's nothing in this world I want. I am the peace of God. I am the truth. I am the light. I am the way. What am I thinking about in this world is going to take any of those things away? Those are eternal. Those are eternal characteristics of the teachers of God. Eternal. You don't have to earn them. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, students have heard this many times, but my favorite passage is the last line of Lesson 52. What you say to yourself is, would I not rather join in the thinking of the universe that continue to obscure all that's really mine with my pitiful, meaningless, private thoughts?
Yeah.
That's what they're pitiful, meaningless, private. And by the way, the private thoughts are also the places where we hide. And that's also the place of guilt.
Yeah.
Because we can't share it.
Yeah. And by the way, John Mundy gave me that about 5, 6, 7 years ago. And it's in Lesson 52, a review lesson. And it's in the fifth paragraph. And I think it's a great paragraph. Would I not rather join the thinking of the universe than to obscure all that is really mine with my pitiful, I love the word pitiful because he's laughing. I mean, Jesus is laughing. My pitiful and meaningless private thoughts. And that's what our thoughts are. They're private thoughts. They're pitiful and meaningless. And we identify, the moment that I identify with any of my thoughts, I'm right back in prison again. I'm in the prison of guilt. But yet we are the guiltless, sinless Son of God. This is always true. In God's mind, that's exactly what we are. We are the perfect, holy child of God. That's who we are. So when you ask the question, how do I reconcile the fact that I don't feel so perfect, I'm dreaming this dream, and God is not even aware of my dream. Jesus actually speaks about that. He says, and that is really good fortune for all of us, because if he did, it would be real.
And he would be as insane as we are.
Yeah, it would be real. There would be no escape, because God sees guilt as real. That's impossible. He knows he created you perfect. And when the word he is another word, you're free. You are perfectly free. The one time I asked, my mantra lesson that I've been doing for the last 14 years or so is lesson 25. I do not know what anything is for. That's my mantra lesson. And I don't use it a lot to ask Holy Spirit, what is this for? But Holy Spirit tells you, ask of all things, what is this for? Because you don't really know. The one time I really didn't trust, because I'm in a hospital room, and I have really never really spent any time in hospitals until I was 72. And I'm in a hospital room, and I was being brought up from having no immune system to bringing me up to having a normal immune system. And every day the doctor would say, you're getting better. You'll be out of here soon. So by the third or fourth day, I said, I know I'm getting better, but Holy Spirit, what is this for? Why am I in a hospital room? Why do I have to stay here? And I got the answer. And it's the same answer for all of us. I assure you it's the same answer. You are perfectly cared for. You are perfectly cared for. So God doesn't need to know about the dream. We are totally safe within the dream. In the teacher's manual, under trust, it says the teachers of God have trust in the world. Notice he doesn't say have trust in God. Have trust in the world, for they have recognized that the world is not governed by the laws that the world made up, the worlds of chaos and terrorism and murder and this and that, but it's governed by a law that is in us but not of us. So the dream is perfectly safe. You are free to have any dream you want. The word is free. You might look at some other brothers and say, why does he have to put his dream on top of my dream? But actually, if a brother is acting insanely, and tells you this in text chapter 7, section 7, the totality of the kingdom. If a brother is acting insanely, and you deny him your blessing, you're denying yourself the blessing. So if you see a brother as not worthy of your blessing, but probably worthy of your cursing, or thinking that he's guilty, or he shouldn't be there, he shouldn't be doing this, he shouldn't. That's the ego perpetuating the guilt, not out there, in us. That's how guilt stays in us, is that we see it out there. So the practice, if you're practicing the course, is to, when you see a brother who's acting insanely, not to avoid him, not to guilt him, to bless him. To bless him, because if you don't bless your brother, you're denying yourself. He tells you this in the same section, chapter 7, section 7, on the very first page. Denial is as total as love is. Deny one brother, and you deny yourself. Isn't that what he says over and over in this course? He says, if you're not wholly joyous, you must have withheld love from one of God's creations.
David?
And the only creation, the only one of God's creations you were holding it from is yourself. There's only one self. That's why lesson 126, what I give to myself. If you withhold the blessing from a brother because he's acting insanely, you're saying the world is real and my brother is guilty, and there for the grace of God go I, but I'm going to hold on to my innocence. I would never do that. Really? No, this is part of your dream. There's no accident. You peopled your dream with those people. As a matter of fact, as Kenny Wapnick would say, hey, listen, if you really want to do this course on the fast track instead of at your own pace, hang out with the people that you don't feel so comfortable with, because that's where your real lessons are. Because they're really pushing your buttons. They're triggering you. They're upsetting you. Because if you hang out with the people that make you feel happy and giddy and glad and fuzzy wuzzies, where's the lesson there? I mean, the only purpose for this world, as he says, the Holy Spirit's only purpose for this world is for the healing of the mind of God's Son. It has no other purpose. There's no other purpose. If you're here to have a better life, to hang out with your friends and avoid the people that you don't consider friends, there's no healing there. You just you're on that treadmill. You're just going around and around. You're not doing anything. You just come back and do the same thing all over again. Go ahead, yeah, sure.
It's actually time for us to take a break.
Okay, very good.
Right,
I'm glad you said that.
You're not the only one.
Okay.
So I'll be back here by 3 o'clock, okay?